The world watches with anxious eyes as North Korea continues to test its military strength. In recent months, the skies over the Korean peninsula have been lit up by a series of missile launches, each one a stark reminder of the country's growing power. On June 20, 2025, more than 10 rockets were fired into the Yellow Sea, a defiant response to joint military exercises conducted by the United States, South Korea, and Japan. These weapons, launched from advanced rocket systems, have the range to strike major cities like Seoul, placing millions of people under a constant shadow of potential conflict. This show of force is not an empty threat, it is a calculated demonstration of capability and a clear message to North Korea's perceived enemies. This aggressive posture is part of a long-term strategy that has been passed down through 3 generations of leaders. The ultimate goal has always been to develop a weapon so powerful that no country, especially the United States, would dare to attack North Korea. This ambition has led to the creation of intercontinental ballistic missiles, or ICBMs. These are long-range missiles designed to carry a nuclear warhead across oceans, capable of reaching cities on the American mainland. Every test, whether it flies for a few hundred kilometers or thousands, is another step toward perfecting this terrifying technology and ensuring the survival of the regime at any cost. The danger these weapons pose to the United States is direct and undeniable. A successful ICBM launch means that North Korea could, in theory, deliver a nuclear payload to American soil, transforming a regional conflict into a global catastrophe. This capability changes the entire dynamic of international relations, forcing American presidents and military leaders to approach North Korea with extreme caution. The existence of these missiles creates a fragile balance of power, where a single miscalculation or misunderstanding could lead to devastating consequences. The frequent launches are not just tests of metal and fuel, they are tests of nerve, pushing diplomatic boundaries and keeping the world on edge. Beyond its own missile program, North Korea has deepened its ties with other nations that challenge the United States. Its recent alliance with Russia, cemented with a mutual defense treaty in 2024, has added another layer of complexity to the global security landscape. North Korea has actively supported Russia's war in Ukraine, supplying vast quantities of ammunition and even soldiers to the front lines. In return, it likely receives economic aid and, more worrisomely, advanced military technology. This cooperation strengthens both countries and creates a united front against Western powers, making the world a more volatile and unpredictable place. To understand North Korea's deep-seated hostility toward the outside world, we must look back to a time of great suffering. Before the peninsula was divided, all of Korea was subjected to a brutal occupation. In 1910, the Empire of Japan annexed Korea, beginning a 35-year period of colonial rule that left deep and lasting scars on the Korean people. The Japanese authorities sought to erase Korean identity entirely. They forced people to change their names to Japanese ones, banned the teaching of the Korean language and history in schools, and demanded absolute loyalty to the Japanese emperor. This systematic attempt to wipe out a nation's culture was a profound humiliation. The oppression was not just cultural, it was also physical and economic. Korean farmers had their land taken away, and the country's resources were exploited to fuel Japan's industrial and military ambitions. Millions of Koreans were forced into hard labor, building roads, railways, and factories for their colonial masters. The conditions were often horrific, with many dying from exhaustion, malnutrition, and abuse. Furthermore, hundreds of thousands of Korean women and girls were forced into sexual slavery for the Japanese Imperial Army, becoming known as comfort women. This dark chapter remains a source of immense pain and anger for all Koreans. This period of intense suffering forged a powerful sense of nationalism and a burning desire for independence. Resistance movements sprang up across the country and in neighboring China. Brave men and women organized secret societies, published underground newspapers, and carried out attacks against the Japanese occupiers. They fought to keep their language, culture, and history alive in the face of overwhelming pressure. The fight for freedom became the defining experience for a generation of Koreans, shaping their worldview and instilling in them a powerful distrust of foreign powers. This historical trauma is fundamental to understanding North Korea's later ideology of self-reliance. It was in this crucible of anti-Japanese resistance that a young and ambitious leader named Kim Il-sung would begin his journey. The stories of Japanese cruelty were not abstract historical facts for him, they were the reality of his childhood. The struggle against a powerful foreign enemy became his life's mission, and the lessons he learned during this dark time would later form the very foundation of the nation he would build. The memory of colonial subjugation would be used to justify extreme isolationism, immense military spending, and the demand for absolute unity under a single powerful leader who promised to never let a foreign power dominate Korea again. Kim Il-sung, the man who would become the eternal president of North Korea, was born in 1912, just 2 years after Japan's annexation of Korea. His early life was steeped in the struggle against foreign domination. According to his official biography, his family was deeply involved in the anti-Japanese resistance, and he witnessed the suffering of his people firsthand. As a teenager, he moved to Manchuria, a region in northeastern China that was a hotbed of Korean guerrilla activity. It was there, leading small bands of fighters in raids against Japanese patrols and outposts, that he began to build his reputation as a dedicated and charismatic revolutionary leader. His fight against the Japanese was long and arduous. For years he led a small but determined group of partisans, surviving harsh winters and constant pursuit by the far more powerful Japanese army. These formative years in the wilderness shaped his military thinking and his political ideology. He learned the value of self-sufficiency, of relying on his own strength and the loyalty of his followers rather than on outside help. The legend of Kim Il-sung, the brilliant guerrilla commander who outsmarted the Japanese at every turn, became a central part of the mythology he would later construct around himself. This narrative of heroic struggle would be used to legitimize his absolute rule. The end of World War II in 1945 brought an end to Japanese rule, but it did not bring true independence to Korea. Instead, the country became a pawn in the new Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union. The peninsula was divided at the 38th parallel, with the Soviets occupying the north and the Americans occupying the south. The Soviets, looking for a Korean leader they could control, chose the young and ambitious Kim Il-sung. With their backing, he returned to Korea as a hero and was quickly installed as the head of the new provisional government in the north. Once in power, Kim Il-sung moved swiftly to consolidate his authority and remake the country in his own image. He established a one-party state, under the rule of the Workers' Party of Korea, and began implementing radical land reforms and nationalizing key industries. Following the Soviet communist model, he systematically eliminated any potential rivals, purging those who did not share his vision or who challenged his leadership. He began building a powerful personality cult, with his portrait displayed in every home, school, and office. He was no longer just a political leader, he was becoming the great leader, the father of the nation. With his power secured, Kim Il-sung introduced a new guiding philosophy for his nation, Juche. Often translated as self-reliance, Juche was more than just an economic policy. It was a comprehensive worldview that would shape every aspect of North Korean society. The core idea was that Korea must be the master of its own destiny, relying on its own people, resources, and military strength to solve its problems. This ideology was a direct response to Korea's history of being dominated by larger powers. As Kim Il-sung aged, he began to prepare for a transfer of power unlike any other in the communist world. Instead of allowing a successor to be chosen by the party, he anointed his eldest son, Kim Jong Un, as his heir. Born in 1941, Kim Jong Un was groomed for leadership from a young age. He was given important positions within the Workers' Party and the government, slowly building his own power base and learning the intricate workings of the state his father had created. By the 1980s, he was widely recognized as the designated successor, and the state propaganda machine began building a personality cult around him, referring to him as the Dear Leader. When Kim Il-sung died of a heart attack in 1994, Kim Jong-il inherited supreme power, marking the first hereditary succession in a communist state. His leadership style, however, was very different from his father's. While Kim Il-sung was an outgoing figure who often gave public speeches, Kim Jong-il was reclusive and enigmatic. He rarely spoke in public and preferred to rule from behind the scenes, issuing directives through written orders. He was known for his eccentric lifestyle, which reportedly included a taste for fine wines, luxury cars, and a vast collection of Hollywood movies, all while the majority of his people lived in poverty. Despite his unusual habits, Kim Jong-il was a shrewd and ruthless leader who understood how to maintain control. He continued and intensified the system of political prison camps, known as where anyone suspected of disloyalty was sent for a life of hard labor. He also relied heavily on a policy of military first, or This policy prioritized the needs of the Korean People's Army above all else, diverting the country's scarce resources to the armed forces. Under the Songun policy, the military became the most powerful institution in the country, and its top generals became Kim Jong Il's most trusted advisors. The core of his father's ambition, securing a nuclear deterrent, became Kim Jong Il's primary obsession. He saw nuclear weapons not just as a tool for defense but as the ultimate guarantee of his regime's survival and a powerful bargaining chip on the international stage. Throughout his rule, he poured resources into the country's clandestine nuclear and missile programs. His efforts culminated in 2006 when North Korea conducted its first ever nuclear test, sending shockwaves around the world. This defiant act announced that North Korea had joined the exclusive club of nuclear-armed states, a dangerous legacy he would pass on to his own son. Kim Jong-il's rise to power coincided with one of the darkest periods in North Korea's history. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 meant the end of crucial economic aid and subsidized trade that had propped up the North Korean economy for decades. This, combined with years of economic mismanagement under the Juche system and, a series of devastating floods and droughts, led to a catastrophic economic collapse. The state-run food distribution system failed, plunging the country into a severe famine that became known as the Arduous March. The period was a brutal test of survival for the North Korean people. Between the mid-1990s and the early 2000s, hundreds of thousands, and possibly millions of North Koreans died from starvation and related illnesses. The idyllic propaganda of a socialist paradise crumbled as people were forced to forage for roots, bark, and grass to survive. Stories of unimaginable suffering emerged from those who managed to escape the country. Despite the widespread humanitarian crisis, Kim Jong-il's government remained steadfast in its priorities. The regime's grip on power never faltered and dissent was ruthlessly suppressed. The famine exposed the brutal reality behind the facade of self-reliance. Even as his people starved, Kim Jong-il doubled down on his military-first policy. The Songun ideology dictated that the strength of the army was the strength of the nation, and he refused to divert resources away from his military programs. While citizens were struggling to find their next meal, the government continued to fund the development of advanced weaponry, including ballistic missiles, and its nascent nuclear program. Kim Jong-il believed that a strong military was the only thing preventing the United States from attacking and toppling his regime, and he was willing to sacrifice the well-being of his population to achieve that security. This period had a profound and lasting impact on North Korean society. The failure of the state to provide for its people forced many to find their own ways to survive, leading to the spontaneous emergence of small illegal markets. This created a generation of North Koreans who were less dependent on the state and more aware of the world outside their sealed borders. At the same time, the experience of the arduous march reinforced the regime's narrative that the country was under siege, blaming the famine on American sanctions and natural disasters rather than its own failed policies. The hardship only strengthened the resolve to build a military capable of confronting its enemies. Just as his father had before him, Kim Jong-il prepared for a hereditary transfer of power. His chosen heir was his youngest son, Kim Jong Un. Little was known about the young man, who had spent part of his youth studying at a private school in Switzerland under a pseudonym. When Kim Jong-il died in December 2011, Kim Jong-un, then in his late 20s, was suddenly thrust into the spotlight as the new great successor. Many outside observers were skeptical, wondering if someone so young and inexperienced could control the powerful generals and party officials who had served his father for decades. Kim Jong-un quickly proved his doubters wrong. He moved decisively to consolidate his power, demonstrating a ruthlessness that surprised many. He promoted a new generation of officials loyal to him, while systematically purging those he saw as a threat. His most shocking move came in 2013, when he ordered the execution of his own uncle, Yang Song-taek, who was once considered the second most powerful man in the country. This brutal act sent a clear message to the North Korean elite. Absolute loyalty was required, and any challenge to his authority would be met with death. In his public persona, Kim Jong-un cultivated an image that blended the styles of his father and grandfather. He adopted the appearance and mannerisms of his revered grandfather Kim Il-sung, even getting a similar haircut and style of dress. Unlike his reclusive father, he was frequently seen in public, visiting factories, farms, and military bases, often with his wife Ri Sol-ju by his side. This created an image of a more modern and accessible leader. However, behind this carefully crafted public image, he continued to rule with an iron fist, tightening border controls and cracking down on information from the outside world. From the very beginning of his rule, Kim Jong Un made it clear that he would not deviate from his family's most important goal, perfecting North Korea's nuclear arsenal. He declared that nuclear weapons were the nation's life and soul, and that he would never give them up. He saw the fates of leaders like Saddam Hussein in Iraq and Muammar Gaddafi in Libya, who gave up their weapons programs only to be overthrown, as a cautionary tale. For Kim Jong Un, a credible nuclear deterrent was not a bargaining chip but an absolute necessity for the survival of his regime and the continuation of his family's dynasty. Under Kim Jong Un's leadership, North Korea's nuclear and missile programs accelerated at a breathtaking pace. While his father and grandfather had laid the groundwork, it was Kim Jong Un who would oversee the country's transformation into a full-fledged nuclear power. He poured immense resources into research and development, and the country began conducting nuclear and missile tests with unprecedented frequency. In the first few years of his rule, he conducted more missile tests than his father and grandfather combined. Each launch provided valuable data, allowing North Korean scientists to refine their designs and improve their technology. The culmination of these efforts came in 2017, a landmark year for North Korea's weapons program. The country successfully conducted its sixth and most powerful nuclear test to date, an explosion that was widely believed to be a hydrogen bomb. Even more significantly, it successfully tested its Hwasong-15 intercontinental ballistic missile, a weapon with a theoretical range capable of striking anywhere on the mainland United States. With these achievements, Kim Jong Un declared that North Korea had finally realized its state nuclear force. He had fulfilled the ambition that had driven his family for decades, possessing a credible nuclear deterrent against the United States. This new status as a de facto nuclear state has profoundly changed North Korea's position in the world. The threat of its weapons has forced the United States and its allies to engage with the regime, leading to a series of historic but ultimately unsuccessful summits between Kim Jong Un and U.S. President Donald Trump. While these meetings provided a temporary lull in tensions, Kim has refused to give up his arsenal, seeing it as his ultimate insurance policy. International sanctions designed to cripple the North Korean economy and force it to denuclearize have failed to achieve their goal. Today, under Kim Jong Un, North Korea continues to expand and modernize its arsenal. He has publicly called for the development of smaller tactical nuclear weapons for battlefield use, and has supervised the testing of a wide array of new missiles including submarine-launched ballistic missiles and hypersonic glide vehicles. He has also pushed for the mass production of missile launchers and artillery shells, demonstrating a commitment to not just developing, but also deploying a large and diverse military force. The nuclear legacy of the Kim dynasty is now fully realized, presenting a permanent and formidable challenge to global security. From the anti-Japanese guerrilla struggles of Kim Il-sung to the nuclear declarations of Kim Jong Un, the story of North Korea is the story of a single family's relentless pursuit of power and security. 3 generations of the Kim dynasty have shaped the nation into a unique and formidable fortress state, built on a foundation of historical grievance, ideological purity, and military might. Kim Il-sung used the trauma of Japanese occupation to create the Juche ideology of self-reliance, establishing a totalitarian system that demanded absolute loyalty. He set the nation on a course of confrontation with the West, a path his descendants would follow without deviation. His son, Kim Jong-il, inherited this fortress and reinforced its walls during a time of immense hardship. While his people suffered through a devastating famine, he implemented the military-first policy, ensuring that the army remained strong and the dream of a nuclear weapon stayed alive. He was the one who took the crucial step of conducting the country's first nuclear test, officially putting the world on notice. His reign cemented the idea that the survival of the Kim regime was inseparable from the development of weapons of mass destruction, no matter the human cost. His legacy was a nation that was both armed and starving. Today, Kim Jong Un stands at the pinnacle of this legacy. He is the leader who brought his family's nuclear ambitions to their logical conclusion, creating an arsenal capable of threatening the United States. Under his rule, North Korea has become more isolated but also more dangerous than ever before. He has proven to be a shrewd and ruthless leader, successfully navigating international pressure while continuing to advance his military goals. The recent flurry of missile tests and the deepening alliance with Russia show that he has no intention of changing course. He is the inheritor and perfecter of the system his grandfather built. The nuclear program is now intertwined with North Korea's national identity. For the regime, it is the ultimate symbol of sovereignty and strength, the one thing that guarantees their voice will be heard on the world stage, and that their country will never again be trampled by foreign powers. For the people of North Korea, it is presented as the crowning achievement of decades of sacrifice. The story of North Korea is a stark reminder of how history, ideology, and the ambitions of a single family can combine to create one of the world's most enduring and dangerous security challenges, a nuclear legacy written in fire and fear.